Good morning, everyone. This is Elizabeth Kish. We're really pleased that you could join us today for our e-extension Financial Security for All monthly webinar. And we have a great conversation planned, and we'll be focusing on moving cooperative extensions financial education and evaluation strategies forward, a call for action. Our speakers today are Suzanne Bartholomae and Maria Pippidis from Iowa State University and University of Delaware, respectively. A little bit of housekeeping. We will be responding to in the chat box, and there will be some polls. Before people ask, we will make the slides available on the Learn page. We are also recording. That's the red dot in the right-hand corner. And I will also link these files that Suzanne and Maria have shared with us. So I think that covers the logistics, and let's get into our topic. Suzanne and Maria, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So this is Suzanne Bartholomae speaking, and we're really excited to be able to have been invited to present today. We think our topic aligns really well with last month's Financial Security for All webinar. And if you weren't able to attend last month's webinar, program leaders Deb Gebecki from North Dakota State University and Paula Peters from Kansas State shared the value of family and consumer sciences. And the purpose of the webinar was to share the evaluation findings from a Battelle report that was released in June 2015. 12 program leaders in the North Central region sponsored the Battelle report, and they conducted an external evaluation of the family and consumer science extension programs in our three areas, in food and nutrition, family life, and family resource management. And the goal was to examine and describe the impact that FCS content has through the delivery of educational programs. And so the report highlighted, if you missed it, what FCS extension, how we are particularly effective, and then what differentiates extension from other organizations that work to improve the health and well-being of individuals and families. So Battelle concluded that FCS extension programming results in substantial economic returns to the nation, and that the program makes a positive difference at the community level by putting into place an infrastructure that facilitates positive behaviors. So the Battelle report discussed each program area in FCS, and with regard to family resource management, the report said that the programs were effective on many levels, but the report also noted that our evaluation efforts were frustrated by inconsistencies across states in reporting methods used, and in some cases, the lack of useful data. And so really this report really helped motivate today's webinar session and really the project that we're going to talk about today. And so for all FCS programs, not just family resource management, Battelle recommended that we reduce parallel efforts and combine efforts in evaluation work in order to better document program successes. And there were key challenges and recommendations that were shared in the report, and you can see in the file share on this Adobe environment, in the Connect, that you can read the report. You can go ahead and download that file. It's listed here, but wait until after the webinar to read it. As a member of the North Central region who was asked to provide Battelle with program data for 2014, it was really a bit of a wake-up call. Battelle had inventoried programs as a first step, so we submitted, from Iowa State University, all of our family resource management programs that we delivered. And Battelle organized the family resource management programs into two broad categories. One was programs in financial literacy, so for example, states that used Money Smart from FDIC, or Ohio had Master Money Mentors. And then the other category was programs in advanced financial management. So VITA sites fell under that category, America Saves program, Recovery After Disaster, which is the Family Financial Toolkit. So that was the first step. And then the next step, Battelle requested that we share impact reports for the programs that we had put forward. And if there wasn't an impact report, then it wasn't a part of the inventory, and it wasn't counted in the report. So think about it, if you were given that request today, how many of you would be able to actually produce an impact report across all of the programs that you currently deliver? We were able to share some of our impacts, but we really felt like there was programming that didn't get counted and that there was really good work that was left on the table. And that really shouldn't be the case. So, at last month's webinar, Deb and Paula asked everyone, are there natural places where we might start with collaborative efforts? And they also said, as experts in family resource management, we need you to create the ideas and to address the challenges of being able to tell a stronger story. Paula suggested that maybe common impact indicators might be the best that we can do. So this report came out around the same time Maria and I were pulling together a roundtable proposal for AFCPE, the Association for Financial Counseling, Planning, and Education. And so I'm going to provide you with a little bit more background about that project and how it ties into what we're talking about today. So last November at the Extension Pre-Conference at AFCPE in Jacksonville, Maria and I presented information on a roundtable with about 60 Extension professionals, and it was the title of today's webinar, which is Moving Cooperative Extension's Financial Education and Evaluation Strategies Forward, a Call for Action. For those of you that attended the pre-conference, don't worry, this isn't going to be a repeat. We're going to share with you some of the results of what we found in those roundtable discussions, because we did run out of time during the conference and we weren't really able to process what people were talking about at their tables. But we're also going to use today's webinar to push what we learned at the AFCPE roundtable, what we learned about organizing a collaborative effort around family resource management, and just try and push it a little bit forward through interactions with you and discussions with you. When we planned the AFCPE roundtable, we spent many hours talking about this idea of a collective effort. And we kept coming back to two motivators for pursuing the initiative. And the first notion that we kept coming back to was, knowing the current state of financial literacy education evaluation literature, we're wondering, could our extension system contribute in advancing this body of literature? So I had just finished updating a review of literature on financial literacy education program evaluation that was published in 2008 as a chapter. And so the conclusions that about the effectiveness of financial literacy education in the 2008 chapter are the same conclusions that we reached in this updated 2016 chapter. And that is that the effectiveness of financial education programs continues to be inconsistent. But Maria and I are confident that, with the system-wide effort to collect program impact, that we could add extension successes to this literature and possibly weigh some of the evidence in favor of the work that we do. Maria's going to talk a little bit about Your Money, Your Goals, which was developed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which trains social service workers to use a financial empowerment toolkit with clients. Last year, NIFA had a partnership with CFPB, and 12 states did participate in training social service workers, and we already have impact data demonstrating the success of that program. So we know that it could work, and there are other previous examples that Maria will share with you, that we know that this could work and that we could make a contribution. Our second motivation to pursue a collective effort about demonstrating the impact of extensions is really related to positioning. And so we discussed our concerns about the positioning of extension financial education programs, positioning relative to other organizations that offer financial education, as well as positioning of extension so that we have evidence that will set us apart, differentiate us, and position us so that we have evidence of accountability when we need it. There was a lot of great energy that was generated at AFCPE, and so I think the feedback that we got from the professionals that did engage was they think it's a worthwhile effort to create and support a national effort. As the bullets I have here as an overview, to coordinate a combined effort to collect program impact data, contribute to the scholarship, as I mentioned, and to really try and identify and pool resources to support a collective effort, and to maybe help build the program evaluation capacity of our colleagues. So now that you have some of the background pieces, we're going to move back forward to the objectives for today. And so, as I said, we want to further our discussion around the ideas of collective impact. And so we're going to share information with you that we collected during these roundtables. We also want to gather information from you about impact reporting. As I said, Marie and I have put a lot of time into kind of processing the idea of a collective effort, and we put some energy and time into gathering information. But we recognize that there are probably many of you here that have already agree that this is a good idea. You probably have been thinking about it much longer, much longer than we have, and that we are benefiting from the work of previous extension colleagues. For others of you, it might be this idea of a new effort or collective effort might be new. So we just want to point out that we respect where everybody might be in this process. Today we want to share a draft of a logic model for Extension's Family Resource Management Program area. We see this as a key step in our efforts. And then we'll also determine next steps to coordinate an initiative. Battelle had a really difficult time pulling all of our information together, and as I mentioned earlier, they recommended that we would have a more standard evaluation effort and more usable data. So we have a few ideas in terms of where we think the work needs to go, but we have likely overlooked something, and we're hoping that you can also help us lead the way. So this might look familiar to some of you from AFCPE, but Maria and I decided that maybe some of you need to be convinced that a collective effort to demonstrate program impacts is important, but that's probably not likely. But we do want to share some of the realities about the work that we do and the environments in which we do our work. So in the past 2 decades, there have been several authoritative reviews that have been published about the efficacy of financial education. There have been GAO reports. There have been reports issued by the President's Advisory Council on Financial Capability. And as I mentioned, the story is pretty much the same. The efficacy of financial education programs are found to be inconsistent, and evidence is typically inconclusive. And as you know, the media picks up on social science research, and journalists like to write about findings for the lay public. And so the question, does financial education work, is picked up, as you can see in these headlines, as a newsworthy topic. There's quite a bit of rhetoric that surrounds the work that we do. So the first headline I have here is Financial Literacy Month is so over, and it was published in the Wall Street Journal. And it highlighted a review by Collins and Overlook that was a review in 2010 on financial education and counseling. And it really highlights 3 main things. And the article says, you know, the studies in the review support, in other words, they make false claims that financial literacy education works. When the reality is that the evaluations rely on people's self-reports of their intentions. And so a class is deemed to be effective if the person says, I've taken the class, I'm going to pay my bills on time. When in reality, we don't have any follow-up data to really make it definitive of whether they followed through on those actions. The second thing about the evaluations in the review that were highlighted in the Wall Street Journal was that most evaluations report positive impacts, but the findings are often small. And then third, the article highlighted a study that showed that a financial literacy class actually made some people worse off. So that was a study of soldiers who ended up being significantly less likely to have systematic control over their budgets. And so evidence that it actually makes you worse off. The other 2 headlines I have here are the problem with financial literacy is that it doesn't work, and stop trying to make financial literacy happen. These articles discuss a more recent meta-analysis called the Financial Literacy, Financial Education, and Downstream Financial Behaviors. And the study analyzed 201 studies of measured and manipulated financial literacy. And so measured financial literacy is really looking at how financial literacy knowledge affects downstream financial behaviors. And then manipulated financial literacy was looking at those financial education interventions, so the programs. And so there were 91 studies that looked at financial education programs. They were only included in the meta-analysis if they had a pre and a post test, and the pre and the post test happened, they were separated by at least 2 weeks. And so these headlines highlight the fact that 2 major findings, really. One is the decay of the effects of financial education over time. So within 20 months, almost everyone who had taken a financial literacy class had forgotten what they had learned. So in other words, they were very quick to forget what they had learned. 1-hour classes, the knowledge wore off in 5 months. And then the other finding was that once the studies adjusted for a person's background, like their personality or their family background, then the financial education impact was very negligible. It was very minuscule. The last set of headlines I have on the screen are in the bottom right corner, and they are against financial literacy education and the financial education fallacy. And these are some really great law reviews that are published by Lauren Willis, and she really argues that financial literacy is a waste of time and money for everybody. And so she's really critical of the research that's been published. She thinks that the evidence is weak. She thinks that researchers are biased and that they make smaller impacts seem much more robust than they actually are. And she questions whether we should be using public dollars for efforts that may not be working. And she also thinks that we may even be harming consumers because we give them enough knowledge and confidence to be dangerous to themselves and to their finances. She likes to advocate for more overt regulation of consumer financial markets. So she makes some really, cogent case against financial education and really gives some great food for thought. But our point in sharing the headlines is to highlight the rhetoric that surrounds the work that we do in extension in terms of financial literacy efforts. And the questions are, do we want to add a voice to this rhetoric? Do you think that financial education is a colossal waste of time? Can we show impact that shows success rather than what's currently being highlighted in these headlines? Should we be painting a different picture? So just a little bit of motivation. And then one final, note of motivation is that, not only is our work couched in this rhetoric in the media, but our work exists in a very crowded marketplace. Financial education is a booming industry. I'm sure you've noticed. It's offered by over 2,100 nonprofit organizations across the nation. I'm sure it's even more than that. There's hundreds of financial service companies that have flagship programs they put millions of dollars into, most major banks, in terms of financial education programs. And the table that I have here, you can see this is from a GAO report, and there's 16 federal agencies that have financial education activities. You can see that there's $68 million spent. That was in 2010. Let me try to move this forward. Well, under the Department of Agriculture, you can see where family and consumer economic programs are. Let me see if I can get my pointer to work. Right here. And that's about $8 million, which will probably represent us. And you can also see that the CFPB, their number is not in the budget, which would make that $68 million actually much, much higher. So the point showing is that we have a very crowded marketplace. There's funding that everybody's going after. So but we know as extension specialists that and extension system that we have a comparative advantage over a lot of the organizations that are in the marketplace. And we have evidence-informed programs. We're non-commercial, we're non-biased, unlike a lot of the financial service companies that are offering education. We have seasoned educators, they understand theories of change, understand what works in terms of learning. So, the GAO, they look for efficiencies in the dollars that the government spends. And so they have highlighted in the last couple of reports that there are parallel efforts going, and they've on between agencies, and they've made recommendations that the government really try and streamline some of those duplications. And so, dollars can go away, they can be allocated elsewhere. And so just to highlight that it's really important that if we have impact and we have evidence as a system, then we're going to be in a much stronger position. So with that food for thought, I'm going to turn it over to Maria, who's going to talk about how we currently report in our system in terms of impact. Maria?
Thank you, Suzanne. That was a great overview and a good, foundation for really working towards a systemic system for reporting. So I wanted to spend just a couple minutes talking a little bit about our current reporting initiatives. And as Suzanne shared in the Vattel report and other reviews of literature show that some of us are collecting data, and certainly the focus has been based either on a specific program or the program impacts have really been developed at a state level. So we just wanted to review what's happening at the national level. And to do this, we spent some time talking with several key players in Extension and in NIFA, and really looked at the current reporting systems. And so we know some of this is a little bit of a review, so bear with me, and I'll try and share what we found out. So NIFA collects information from the states based on our annual reports of accomplishment and the plans of work that are sent forth to the federal level. And there is a web-based reporting system that states use to submit information, and this is done annually. There is a master list for all of the institutions, and that include the institution and their proposed areas of work and the indicators that they use. And this is available actually from NIFA in their business reporting office. So there is a way to pull information from this database, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So one of the other things that may be a review, but there are what are called knowledge areas. And these were developed several decades ago to try and articulate the areas in which cooperative extension works. And the ones that support family consumer science, family resource management include the knowledge area 801, which is individual and family resource management, and to some extent the knowledge area 607, which is consumer economics. All of our teaching and certainly some of our research efforts fall into each of these areas. So these knowledge areas are very broad and inclusive, and information about these areas can be found on the website that I have listed there under the knowledge areas. So I wanted to share that. And then one of the other people that we talked to as we were working on this for our fall presentation was Jane Schuhart. And Jane was the previous National Family Resource Management Program leader and is now the executive director for the Cooperative Extension Committee on Policy, ECOP, right, at the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. And one of the things she mentioned and encouraged us to go take a look at was this land grant impacts website, and the website's listed there on the slide. And this sort of is a collective website that states are choosing to contribute to. And she indicated that this site is really used by decision makers and the media to gather information. And we have to say that it's very interesting to go to this site. You can search by topic. You can also search by state. And you can actually see for yourself what's been reported and what hasn't. And so it may, I guess one suggestion might be to get in touch with the person who is posting information and have a little conversation about what gets chosen to be reported here, actually both here and through the NIFA reporting system. So now I want to move on to indicators. So NIFA provides some guidance on indicators, and the use of this is voluntary. And there are suggested indicators for the NIFA priority areas. And under family and consumer sciences, there is one outcome that's expressed as, and I've got it up here at the very top, right? Increase the health and well-being of individuals, families, and communities participating in family and consumer science programs. Boy, is that broad. Pretty much everything that we can do fits underneath that. But for us in family resource management, it focuses on financial capability and consumer decision-making. And the indicators for us are also listed on the slide. And so you can see the number of individuals who learn about financial capability, and there's the listing there of those 5 areas. The number who've learned about consumer decision-making, the number who've improved or adopted financial capability and or consumer behavior skills, and then the number of reported changes in financial capability or consumer behavior. So again, pretty broad, big umbrella. A lot of what we do can fall underneath these. So one of the other things, of course, we're investigative in our thinking. We wanted to know how this really worked at NIFA. And so we connected with a gal named Caitlin Sellers, who is a planning, accountability, and reporting staff member, and asked for a summary of the knowledge areas 601 and 807 indicators, and to kind of get a sense of what's being used across the country. When we received the list, we noticed that states are really all over the board. Some are very specific based on the program they're doing, and some are very general. So the reality is states can report whatever they want to. So then we were wondering about impact statements, and so we asked Caitlin about that process. And she indicated that impact statements come into the system and are organized by issue, response, and outcomes, and then described a process, say if there was a request from Congress or the media. So she said that NIFA is often asked to report on outcomes and evidence of success on specific areas, and that those reports can go to the department level or to Congress. And in her search, she can look for outcomes and success stories based on knowledge areas, portfolios, keywords, and any number of parameters. So they respond to those requests for outcomes on a case-by-case basis. And as an example, she shared that they might be asked to provide 5 examples of how extension dollars are making a difference in the lives of youth across the country. And so for this, she could filter down to a knowledge area for youth development, K806, and then from there, from those results, she might do a keyword search, or she might look for a knowledge area or a topic like healthy eating habits, or maybe knowledge increase, or something like that, or STEM. And from that result, she could pick what she would deem sort of the best stories and put together the information and send it along. So pretty labor intensive, and really based on the impact stories. And so there's nothing that's aggregatable, I'll just say. So this story shows how time-intensive our reporting system can be, and specific information is a little hard to gather. It tells us that if your congressperson wanted to know about your efforts, unless it is reported to NIFA, there are no real numbers or story that can be effectively identified. And it provides some evidence that it would behoove us to get organized so that we can provide information that is easily found and that is impactful, and tell a story about what we're doing for consumers, as well as share this information with decision makers. So we've been at this a while, and so there are some system-wide efforts in delivery and evaluation. But it's important to know that there has never been any specific funding line within USDA or NIFA for reporting. And as many of you know, historically, the approach has been to build partnerships around specific programs that were then evaluated with the partnering organization or across the extension system. And so I've listed here a few that we certainly know about and have happened in the past. The National Endowment for Financial Education's High School Financial Planning Program has been around since the mid-'80s, and Cooperative Extension's been involved with that program a long time and has really even helped with the evaluation of part of this. Financial security later in life, this issue team or community of practice team really worked to develop a standardized indicator and reporting system for the retirement planning and later life financial education programming that was happening across the states. And that included identifying indicators and developing an online reporting system. Bob O'Neill shared this information with us, and she indicated that Richard Poling from Tennessee and the Financial Security and Later Life Community of Practice really helped to develop this system, and then extension professionals could enter program information. And it was really based on program objectives as opposed to necessarily using the same curriculum across the states. But data could then be aggregated and shared. And of course, one of the downsides to this was that it was really up to people to be committed to report, and not everyone did so in a timely fashion. Another initiative was Money 2000, and that happened obviously around the year 2000. It was implemented over, actually before 2000, but implemented over 5 years, and 28 states participated, and there was some data collection associated with that project, including how many dollars were saved. And there's some journal articles in the Journal of Extension to kind of share that program outcome. So currently there's several other initiatives happening. These might be called our signature programs that have evaluation built in and are being used by states. And though there is an expectation that evaluation is reported in, it really all depends on the states as to whether this happens. And it's certainly based on the lead agency to report national information. And however, this may not be reported into NIFA or into the extension system as a whole. So the high school financial planning program is still there. We're still involved with that as a system. Barbara O'Neill and her team have worked to develop the system-wide effort around small steps for health and wealth for both program delivery and evaluation. NIFA, under the leadership of Susan Shockey, created a partnership in 2014 with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to create a system-wide effort regarding the Your Money, Your Goals training, and that involved 12 states who then did the training and reported in data. And we were able to gather and compile that data as a system. The Smart Choice Health Insurance Program, developed by University of Maryland and University of Delaware Extension, Health Insurance Literacy Team have worked to develop a system-wide effort for program delivery and evaluation, and have been reporting that data out via journal articles and professional meetings. There may be more, and these are just some of the examples of how, when working together, we can aggregate information and tell a really great story about our impact. So this concludes an overview of what has been or is currently happening around evaluation and reporting. And Suzanne and I were intrigued about the idea of being more consistent and deliberate with our programming efforts, and hence the AFCPE Roundtable happened. And from here, I'd really like to share some of the results from that Roundtable. So, as Suzanne said, at the Roundtable, we had about 60 Extension Family Resource Management professionals who got an opportunity to share information. We had 6 questions that helped us to gather information about the process of creating a system to collect evaluation data. And we have summarized that Roundtable information and actually have it attached as a file here that you can download and review. But I just wanted to pull a few things from that. There were people who were really interested in better telling our story and working together to come up with a system that we can all use. There were some states that were using the same curriculum or program while others are creating and using their own. Every state is different. This is one of the comments. Every state is different, and that the system needs to be flexible and inclusive enough to accommodate each state's or educator's program so that we can somehow aggregate to share our collective story. Actually a few people said that they would be interested in contributing to the research about financial education and its impact. Someone else said, boy, the system really needs to be simple so that we can use it. And that, and lastly, I wanted to share that folks recognized the need to build capacity of our personnel through training and capacity of our system through some fund development. So we're really glad that you joined us today, because we're still collecting some information so we can develop a good approach. And so we have a couple of polls we'd like for you to help us with. And the first one has to do with program topics. So my magical helper will put that up there. And so our first poll has to do with what topics are you currently addressing in your state? And so what we'd like you to do is, well, we know from the Roundtable, from the Battelle report, from conversations with folks, is we are addressing many topics. And really, in order for us to ensure that our indicators and a logic model reflect the breadth of our work, we wanted to be sure that we're capturing all the topics. And you get the point here. Here's a list, and you can click more than one. So as you are reading through the list, really just identify the topics that you all are addressing in your state. And if there's anything that's missing, please add it in the chat box. Whew, look at us. We are doing some awesome work. All right, I'll give it another few moments, another, I don't know, 15 seconds, and you guys can look through that. All right. So I'm going to close the poll. Hope that's okay. And go on to our next slide, which this is our curriculum inventory. So again, this came from information gathered at the Roundtable and from the Battelle report, and we started sort of this list of curriculum that the system was using. And I know this is not all inclusive. And so if there are additional curriculums, if you wouldn't mind adding them to the chat box, that would be really great. And I think they're opened a new chat box. It doesn't matter which one you put it in, but chat 1 says curriculum. You know, one of the other things that, you know, I end up doing in my state is working with my ag colleagues as well around succession planning and retirement planning. And so if there's something around those topics that you all want to share, that might also be appropriate to add into the mix there. Yes, thank you for Annie's project. That's good. Good, I can hardly wait to add these to our list. There's so much we're doing. Great, that's great. So good, get real, get real, here's the deal. Ready, set, graduate. Annie's project, realizing the American dream, planning for a secure retirement, managing for today, tomorrow, planning ahead. All right, identity theft, wonderful. So I think we can leave this chat open for a little bit longer, and folks can keep typing. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne, who's going to talk a little bit about outcomes and level of impact.
Thanks, Maria. So respondents at the Roundtable identified another key piece of information that we need as a a group in terms of organizing our effort around impact. And so the idea that we need to have a sense of what program outcomes are we striving for in our financial education programs, in other words, what are we measuring? We recognize that not all programs are striving for the same outcome, but we really need to get a grasp on what type of outcomes are we looking at. And so, as educators, we're interested in the extent to which people change or benefit as a result of participating in our programs. And so that's what we refer to as impact. And what I have on the screen here is an impact hierarchy. And it comes from the NIFA evaluation toolkit, which is also, we posted on that file share. And the logic model is one way of organizing impact indicators. And Marie's going to go over that next on the next slide. And so, you plan your impact evaluation in a really rational, logical model when you use a logic model. But this impact hierarchy looks at impacts in a hierarchical manner where it's based on the order of the way the change happens in an individual when they come to our program. So the lower levels are the easiest to document and probably the weaker type of evidence that we get from our programs. And so starting at the bottom one would be, satisfaction with the program. But if we do well at that program, then we have a greater potential to impact these later levels of hierarchy or upper, steps of hierarchy. So, the very top step is what we consider the long-term impact. So it focuses on a condition in a person, an improved condition. So it might be that they buy a house or that they get out of debt, or some, ideally we could even study societal impacts. We might look at lowering foreclosure or bankruptcy rates. And so when we think about the logic model, that's the far right hand column of the logic model, which we usually label impact. And that's, again, the benefits that people derive from our programs. And if you look at the middle, like step 3 in this level of impact, this hierarchy, it's the intermediate level. So what actions are people taking as a result? How are they changing their behavior or their practice? And that's really the output section of the logic model. And step 2 might be our short-term impacts that focus on changes in knowledge, attitudes, aspirations. You can see confidence, skills. And that's the input typically in our logic model. So we're interested in knowing from you what level are you typically evaluating and reporting in terms of your impacts. And so our next step is going to be to get feedback from you so you could tell us how your state's evaluating programs. And we're going to use another poll to do this. We're actually going to have 2 polls. We want you to describe the level of impact you're collecting data and then how you're collecting your impact data. Are you doing pre-post tests? Are you doing retrospective pre-post? Are you doing follow-up surveys? And so there's 2 polls. So if you could just give us some feedback of how you're currently measuring impact, that would be great.
And again, you can vote more than once.
Yeah, check. That's right. Thanks. Check all of it applies. And as you're answering the poll, so I mentioned the NIFA toolkit, and this is something that Angela Lyons had worked on. And one of the other file shares that we have in listed is her article with colleagues that called "Are We Making the Grade?" and it's a national overview of financial education and program evaluation, which I think might have been really a starting point for her work on the NIFA evaluation toolkit. But it really looked, there are 8 focus groups with extension educators and financial educators, but mostly extension educators, just really doing a needs assessment in terms of program evaluation in the system and what are the barriers and challenges that we have as a system, or what extension professionals have individually in terms of being able to successfully execute an evaluation. And then, what are the resources that are needed? And sort of similar questions to what we're asking here. How are you currently, what's your current state of program evaluation? And so that would be, if you have an interest in this, it's really still, even though it was published 10 years ago, it's still a very timely, I think, piece of work. And again, serves the foundation of that NIFA toolkit, which some people don't even know exists, but it's a really great resource in terms of helping inform program evaluation. And it looks like our poll has slowed down, and we're getting some.
And if you haven't caught that, the poll 2A first only let you vote for one, but now it's been switched over. So if you need to revote, take a second to do that. And yes, thank you, Nancy. Of course, the level of impact depends on the program, and we recognize that. We're just trying to get a sense of where the system is comfortable in terms of doing program evaluation. Okay, so looks like we're done. Thank you for that. And I get to move on to the next slide. Now, don't go cross-eyed. We were tried really hard to develop a sample logic model. And so this was adapted for the North Central Region Family Economic Security Logic Model that Suzanne shared with me in our conversations. And given everything that we've looked at, including the NIFA knowledge areas, the indicators developed for the Financial Security and Later Life Impact Project, and some of the curriculum topics we've identified, I tried to start a draft that could be used as a starting point for discussion regarding sort of a national logic model for financial capability. And so it really just tried, it's inclusive, but I know it's not inclusive of everything. And it's really just the beginning in terms of trying to create a document that we can share and agree upon across our system. And I think once we agree, we can then begin to identify the types of indicators the system can use to really report our data. And so the information you all shared today can also, or will also, be built into this logic model. And I believe that this logic model is listed under the file share, so you can download that. So this is just the beginning, and hopefully an incentive for you to join this initiative, knowing that we're not starting from scratch. And from there, I know you can't read this very well, and I don't expect you to, but I wanted to also share that we tried to move the initiative a little bit further along by getting started regarding indicators. And so again, this list is attached in the file share. And again, I hope you can see we're not starting from scratch in terms of our thinking here. So our next slide is, again, a couple of chat boxes to get your input into what you think would help build the capacity to encourage collective program evaluation. And the chat 3 is, what other insights or ideas could you suggest as we move forward in this work? So take a couple moments and type in either of them or one of them and share your ideas.
Are you putting up individual chat boxes, or do you want us just in the general chat box? And
you should be seeing individual new chat boxes.
I don't. But just so if you don't see them, we can just use the chat, right?
Yes. Yes, please do. So Marty, thank you for that. Resources. Can you be a little bit more specific? Thank you. Yeah, that's a great idea, sort of a list, a central database of the evidence-based extension programs and curriculum. That would be great. That's going to take a little work to sort of sort through and see what is evidence-based and what isn't. Yes, Erica, thank you. I think that's a really a neat idea that would make sense from from a perspective of aggregating information. We've talked about that, so that just confirms some of our thinking. Yes, thanks, Barbara. We're going to talk a little bit about that effort in a few minutes. All right, looks like things are slowing down a little bit, so we're going to move on to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne.
Hey, thank you. So this next slide is a key opportunity that was part of the Battelle report. And I'm getting back to the Battelle report because it really offered the calling and in terms of thinking about a collective effort. One of the outcomes of this Battelle report is that leaders, the program leaders in family consumer sciences in the North Central region, they've really taken these findings to heart. And so they're convening a meeting in Chicago in April for extension faculty across the subject areas. And this is a direct result of what they found in the Battelle study and some of the issues and the opportunities that were outlined in the study. And so the objective of that April meeting is to introduce NCR extension faculty to each other if we don't know each other, but also to share activities across the North Central region, and then discuss potential multi-state programming opportunities and then funding opportunities as well. But this isn't a regional issue. This is a system-wide issue, and there seems to be some synergies around it. Barb mentioned in the chat box that she has been asked to represent Cooperative Extension, the Family Economics program area on a NIFA evaluation work group, and so she's going to be going to a meeting in April as well. Hers is a little bit earlier than ours. Hers is April 14th. We're going to be meeting April 17th. But for both of those meetings, it's if we could have the start of developing an evaluation strategy that is for our system, something that we can articulate, then it will definitely help these efforts. And again, there seems to be some synergies around this. So our next call for action is hopefully that some of you that are online that have lasted through the webinar that clearly maybe you're interested in helping us. We think that the next steps, we've really tried to move some of the work forward from AFCPE, from the roundtable, by getting the logic model started, getting the common indicators started, getting an inventory of curriculum started. But we really, we had the input of 60 individuals. Not everybody was at AFCPE, but we want to invite people to help us with these efforts. And so we really envision there being maybe some web-based meetings of different work groups. The work has started, but we envisioned a couple different work groups. We think they probably will inform each other. Maybe we have a small enough group that they all get together. We don't know how it will play out, but what we thought where we would start would be maybe a work group around the logic model, that they would review and amend the logic model, because the logic model can help guide our work as a framework in terms of curriculums and indicators. A work group that identifies agreed upon common indicators. And so there's been discussion in the chat box about, maybe identifying just a few simple ones that we could all use, and we don't necessarily have to use the same curriculum. Maybe we use the same indicators and a common indicator. Maybe some people think that we should continue, that we should attempt to have a common curriculum. Maybe we test a common curriculum. So a work group that looks at continuing to develop this inventory curriculum. And, I think it was Lori had a great idea about, having a database. So sort of like Jumpstart, maybe having a clearinghouse of what the evidence-based exploring the avenues in terms of ways that we can contribute to scholarly research. So this group might organize and identify some of the opportunities to contribute to scholarly research. The group might work on what factors contribute to the outcomes of an effective financial education program. We've talked about, in the logic model, what are we measuring in terms of financial security or capability or wellness? And, maybe we explore what valid and reliable measures are currently out there. So if you want to stay connected with the project and be part of these work groups, we're going to put up a, I guess maybe in the chat box, the call to action. We would like for you to put your name and your email and the work group that you think you would like to be a part of into the chat box. So we'd really love for you to stay involved. And so the work groups you can see are listed here, and you could just say logic model or evaluation strategy, common indicators, whatever it is that you might be interested in. And we're getting close to time here, so I'll just leave this up. But if we can have a consistent and standard approach to program evaluation, we can really would help us identify effective best practices, improve our program effectiveness, and then it really could help lead to policies that would help consumers make better decisions. And so we hope you will join us in these efforts. And I'm happy to see that some people are interested.
Yeah, this is Elizabeth. We may be having some challenges letting people see the chat box. If you lost connection, because I also lost connection the same time Suzanne did, and somehow I hit a different button and it came back. So we will send an email out as well, right, with this. Can we do that, Suzanne and Maria?
Sure.
To let people volunteer and maybe give them a heads.
Looks like people are signing up. I can still see what's going on.
But just in case there's a few who.
Great.
You're worried about K-State internet, and it turned out. Yeah, I would say. So here's another opportunity. It's exactly 12:30, so we're going to wrap up. But if we can leave the chat boxes open. If you have any other questions to ask or comments you'd like to make, in addition to signing up for work groups, this is your opportunity. I want to thank Suzanne and Maria for all their good thinking and their work and their leadership on this. I think we all know it's really important, and it's a really good opportunity for us to come together and talk about what we do so people know us. So thank you, Suzanne and Maria.
And thank you, everyone, for participating and contributing and supporting Next Steps.
Yeah, great. Thank you.